welcome to the deep dive.
Okay, let's just jump right in. Information overload. It's that feeling, right? Students drowning in research, professionals in finance, law, marketing, trying to keep up.
Yeah, absolutely. Or, just anyone scrolling through endless feeds and notifications, feeling swamped.
Totally swamped. And you're not alone if you feel that way.
Right. And it feels very modern, this digital flood, but
Yeah.
the core problem, it's actually old. Our sources mention thinkers back in the 13th century already feeling overwhelmed.
Wow. 13th century.
Yeah. Then the printing press, the digital age, the internet, it just kept ramping up.
Yeah.
So what used to be maybe an academic worry is now, well, it's everywhere. Affects pretty much everyone.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we've looked at some really interesting stuff. There's this practical guide from PDF.ai with 10 specific strategies for, dealing with information overload now in 2025.
Right, covering everything from digital habits to like how we even think about information. And then there's this other piece, a really thought-provoking article from the Journal of Information Literacy. It suggests a different angle, a mindfulness-based approach, especially for navigating, well, the messy, emotional stuff we see online.
Which is so relevant today.
Totally. So our mission here is simple. Pull out the best techniques, the sharpest insights, to help you move from feeling buried to actually being in control, getting your focus back, being more productive.
And what's cool is how these two sources kind of talk to each other. The 10 strategies are the what's and how, the concrete tools.
The practical stuff.
Exactly. And the mindfulness framework. That gives you a lens, a way to apply those tools better in today's, let's face it, complex and often pretty overwhelming information world.
Okay, let's unpack those 10 strategies then.
Right.
First up, information filtering. Now, this sounds like, just hitting unsubscribe, but the source suggests it's deeper than that.
Oh, yeah, much deeper. It's about being proactive, not just reacting to whatever hits your inbox or feed, but consciously setting up systems, like a gatekeeper for your attention.
A bouncer for your brain? I like that.
Kind of, yeah. So using automated tools, maybe email filters, news aggregators, setting rules based on keywords, topics, things that matter to you and your goals.
Right, so you're curating your own incoming stream. The PDS.ai piece mentions prioritizing based on urgency and systems that learn what you like over time.
Exactly. That personalization is key. Over time, good filters get better at sifting the noise and just bringing you the relevant stuff. Imagine like a researcher getting instant alerts for exactly the right studies.
Huge time saver.
Huge time and energy saver. You can use that brain power for the actual work, the deep thinking.
Okay, but hang on. What about the downside? The filter bubble idea. Eli Pariser coined that, right? And Clay Shirky's work is mentioned too, filter failure.
Yeah, that's the big caution. It's a really critical point. If you filter too aggressively, you can definitely end up in an echo chamber.
Only seeing stuff you already agree with.
Exactly. Shielded from different views, maybe reinforcing biases you didn't even know you had. And, you might miss something crucial that just doesn't fit your neat little filter rules.
Plus, it takes work, doesn't it, setting up and tweaking these things?
It does. It's not just set it and forget it. It requires some initial effort and ongoing maintenance.
So how do we avoid getting trapped in that bubble but still get the benefits? The article had some tips.
Yeah, reviewing and updating your filters regularly is number one. Your needs change, right? So your filters should too.
Makes sense.
Maybe try tiered filtering, stricter for some things, looser for others, and combining automatic filters with like occasional manual checks. That helps catch things the algorithms might miss.
And that yes, no, maybe triage thing for quick decisions.
Yeah, that sounds like a really practical way to handle stuff in the moment. Keep control.
Okay, definitely actionable. Let's move to number 2, time blocking. We hear about this for productivity generally, but how does it specifically help with information overload?
Well, time blocking here is about scheduling specific chunks of your day for consuming and processing information intentionally.
Okay.
So instead of constantly reacting to pings and emails, you decide, right, 10:00 to 10:30 is for industry news, or 2:00 I am only working on this report. It's controlling when and how you engage.
Taking back the reins of your schedule and your focus, the PDF.ai source mentions batch processing similar info,
Yeah,
and deep work blocks.
exactly. Batching, say, all your emails into one slot minimizes context switching, jumping between tasks.
Yeah.
That kills focus and drains energy.
Right. It takes time to re-engage.
It really does. And those distraction-free deep work blocks, they're crucial for tackling complex information without constant interruptions. It sets boundaries, reduces that feeling of always being on.
And some big names use this. Cal Newport, obviously. Elon Musk with those five-minute blocks.
Yeah, famously granular. And Bill Gates' Think Weeks, that's like extreme time blocking for deep dives.
Yeah.
Even things like company no meeting days fit this idea.
It shows the power of structuring your time intentionally, moving from reactive to proactive.
That's the core shift. You manage your attention, it doesn't manage you.
But it takes serious discipline, doesn't it? And what if urgent stuff pops up, wrecks your perfect schedule?
Yeah, that's the challenge. It can feel rigid. The source suggests starting broader than refining. Start big, refine small. And
Wow.
definitely build in buffer time between blocks. Stuff always comes up. And maybe schedule specific check-in times for email or Slack rather than constant monitoring. There are tools, too, apps that can help enforce those blocks.
Right. Build in flexibility. Good advice. Okay, strategy 3, digital minimalism. This feels bigger, more about our whole relationship with tech.
Exactly. It's less a tactic, more a philosophy. Being intentional about the technology you use, focusing only on the tools and information sources that genuinely add value.
So not anti-technology, but anti-mindless technology use.
Precisely. It tackles that often unconscious way we just get sucked into apps and feeds. It's about curating your digital life.
And the PDF.ai piece talks about digital decluttering, like getting rid of apps, subscriptions, accounts you don't really need.
Yeah, that regular pruning is key. It directly cuts down the number of things screaming for your attention. And creating personal rules helps too.
Like no phones in the bedroom.
Yeah, or specific times for social media checks. Building boundaries to stop that constant digital pull.
The benefits sound great. Less info flooding in, better focus, less anxiety. But what are the real challenges? It can't be easy.
No, it's not. Social pressure is a big one. FOMO, the fear of missing out, is real.
Definitely.
And if your job requires you to be constantly connected, finding that balance is tricky. It takes conscious effort, maybe even negotiation.
But it feels like this idea is growing. Cal Newport, Tristan Harris, the Center for Humane Technology, people are talking about digital wellness. Even dumb phones making a comeback.
It's definitely gaining momentum. People are realizing the cost of constant connection. The parallel with Marie Kondo only keeping what sparks joy or adds value works for digital stuff too.
Even some tech execs are simplifying their own tech use.
Right, and companies trying digital Sabbaths, it shows it's moving beyond just a personal quirk.
So if someone wants to try this, where do they start? Practical first steps.
The 30-day digital declutter is a great starting point. Remove non-essentials, see what you actually miss, then reintroduce things intentionally.
Okay, like a trial separation from your apps.
Exactly. Also, maybe a wait period before adopting any new tool or app forces you to think if you really need it. And physical barriers, phone in another room during focus time.
I like the burner list idea too, jotting down digital tasks instead of reacting instantly, and setting personal rules for how and why you use each platform.
It's all about building conscious habits instead of just letting the tech dictate your behavior.
Makes sense.
Mm.
Okay, let's shift to a more cognitive strategy. Chunking and batching. This sounds a bit like time blocking again.
Similar, but the focus is different. Time blocking is when. Chunking and batching is how you mentally group and process the information itself.
Ah, okay. Grouping similar things together.
Exactly, like dealing with all your email replies in one go or reading several related articles back to back. It reduces the mental gear shifting.
Leveraging how our brains naturally like to handle similar tasks together.
Yeah.
The PDF.ai source mentions sorting physical mail before opening it like that.
Precisely that kind of pre-organization. By focusing on one type of information, you reduce the cognitive load for each item. It improves understanding, retention, and efficiency. Avoids that scattered feeling.
And chunking links back to George Miller's research on short-term memory, right?
Right. His classic work suggested we handle info better in small chunks. Grouping related items helps us manage more complex information effectively.
And batching is big in productivity circles, Tim Ferriss has mentioned.
Yeah, Ferriss really popularized applying batching to all sorts of tasks, including information processing, to cut down on wasted time and mental fatigue. Things like GTD and Inbox Zero use batching principles too.
What are the tricky parts here? Does it take a lot of setup?
Well, the initial effort to define your categories and consistently sort things can be a hurdle, and it might not work well for super urgent stuff that cuts across categories.
Right. Life isn't always neat categories.
Exactly. And sticking to it requires discipline, especially when information feels messy or interconnected.
But the tips seem helpful. Clear category definitions, maybe using tags or colors, scheduling batching sessions when you're sharpest.
Yeah, and even having a misbatch with a time limit seems smart for catching the odds and ends without breaking the whole system.
Keeps it structured but not totally rigid.
Exactly. Find what fits your workflow. It should simplify, not add another layer of complexity.
Okay, next up, the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. Classic concept. How does that apply to information overload?
The idea here is that probably 80% of the real value you get the insights, the useful knowledge comes from only about 20% of the information you consume.
Okay, so focus on that crucial 20%.
Right. Identify those high impact sources, the stuff that really moves the needle for you, and consciously spend less time and energy on the other 80%, the less valuable stuff. Maximize your return on attention.
Being super selective. The source mentions Warren Buffett's focused reading, Jeff Bezos' push for concise memos.
Great examples. Buffett isn't reading everything. He's reading the key reports deeply. Bezos demanded brevity to force focus on what's most important. Even Google's PageRank was about identifying the most authoritative, valuable 20% of web pages.
Makes sense. But identifying that 20%, that sounds subjective. And maybe risky? What if you miss something important in the 80%?
It definitely requires judgment and knowing what matters for your goals. And yeah, there's a risk of missing outliers or things that become important later. Predicting the vital 20% isn't always easy.
Plus, some work cultures push you to know everything.
True. There can be resistance to deliberately ignoring information, even low-value stuff.
So how do you apply it practically? The article had tips.
Regularly auditing your sources is key. Asking, where am I really getting value? I like the idea of a not-to-read list, too.
Yeah, actively deciding what not to consume.
And constantly applying a so what test to information. Does this actually matter? Does it change anything? Maybe even a scoring system for sources. And reviewing that list periodically.
It's about actively curating your info diet based on impact, not just volume.
Exactly. Shifting from passive consumption to really intentional, value-driven engagement.
Okay, strategy 6, mindfulness and attention training. Now, this feels like it connects directly to that Journal of Information Literacy article. How does working on our mental state help?
Well, most strategies we've discussed are external, managing the flow, the timing, the tools. Mindfulness is internal. It's about the quality of your engagement. Training your brain to focus better, notice distractions, and resist that constant pull.
Taking back control of your own attention, basically. Breaking those automatic must-check-now habits.
You got it. Our attention gets so fragmented. Mindfulness helps you notice where it's going and choose what to direct it. It helps filter distractions internally, and it makes you more aware of your own consumption habits, like, why am I scrolling right now?
And the benefits go beyond just handling info better, like less stress.
Definitely. Being more present, more focused, that has huge ripple effects. Less overwhelm, better comprehension, better decisions because you're actually processing, not just reacting. And yeah, reduced stress and anxiety are often big outcomes. It's a skill for life, not just work.
The tips for integrating it seem doable. Start small, maybe 5–10 minutes. Mindful transitions between tasks. The SOP technique.
Yeah, SOP. Stop, take a breath, observe what's happening internally and externally, then proceed consciously. It's a great circuit breaker. Even just brief mindful moments before checking email or starting a task can build that muscle over time.
Consistency over intensity, maybe.
Exactly. Gently training your attention, not forcing it.
Okay, strategy 7. Information dashboards and visualization. This sounds like using visuals to make data less daunting.
That's the core idea. Our brains process visuals way faster than text or raw numbers. Dashboards turn complex data into charts, graphs, maps, things you can grasp quickly.
Spot patterns, trends, insights more easily.
Right. Instead of wading through spreadsheets, you get a high-level picture. Key metrics at a glance, often interactive, so you can dig deeper if needed.
Like a control panel for your important info. The source mentions things like Bloomberg terminals, Tableau, even personal tools like Notion or Obsidian having these features.
Yeah, it's used everywhere, from high finance to personal knowledge management. The principle is the same. Visuals cut through complexity, reduce cognitive load, and hopefully lead to better, faster decisions. Figures like Edward Tufte have championed this for ages.
But how do you make a dashboard that helps, not hinders? Avoid just creating more visual clutter.
Good question. Key principles are things like overview first, then details on demand. Don't throw everything at the user at once.
Start simple.
Right. Limit the number of key metrics up front, maybe 5 to 7. Use clear, consistent color coding. Progressive disclosure, reveal info as needed. And tailor views for specific tasks.
But there are risks, right? Oversimplification
Oh,
or just having too many dashboards.
absolutely. A bad dashboard can mislead or hide crucial details. And yeah, dashboard proliferation is a real thing. Ending up with so many dashboards, it becomes its own overload problem. Needs a strategic approach.
Makes sense. Okay, number 8, knowledge management systems, KMS. This feels more organizational, maybe.
Often, yes. KMS are structured ways for groups, usually organizations, to capture, organize, find, and share knowledge, turning scattered info and individual expertise into a collective, reusable asset.
So less reinventing the wheel, finding answers faster. The source mentions centralized repositories, taxonomy. What's taxonomy again, simply?
Think of it like a really good library index or tagging system for all the information. Consistent categories, labels, relationships, so stuff is findable and makes sense together. Without it, a KMS just becomes a messy data dump.
But setting one up and keeping it useful sounds like a big job.
It is. It needs commitment resources, time, and, crucially, ongoing maintenance, like weeding a garden. Info gets outdated. And the biggest hurdle, getting people to actually use it and contribute to it consistently, adoption is everything.
Right, if nobody uses it, it's worthless. Examples given range from big corporate tools like Confluence to personal ones like Rome or Obsidian, applying similar principles, and thinkers like Peter Drucker or Tiago Forte's second brain.
It shows the core ideas scale, capturing, organizing, retrieving valuables everywhere. Best practices often focus on making it easy to find stuff, easy to add stuff. Low friction is key. Regular gardening to keep it healthy.
Okay, number 9, delegated information processing. Offloading the work, basically.
Strategically, yes, assigning the consumption and analysis of some information to others, human assistants, team members, even AI tools, recognizing you don't have to personally process everything.
Optimizing how info gets to you or gets acted on without you being the bottleneck.
Exactly. It could be someone summarizing reports, an AI filtering news, research assistants gathering data, collaborative teams curating resources.
Freeing up your own mental bandwidth for the big picture stuff.
That's the goal. Reduce your load, leverage specialized expertise, process things in parallel, scale your capacity.
Downsides. What do you need to watch out for?
You might lose nuance if you're not seeing the raw info. You need to trust your delegate human or AI. There can be costs. And clear communication is absolutely critical. Misunderstandings can lead to bad outcomes.
We see examples like executive assistants, analysts, AI summarizers, curated newsletters like The Skim, even algorithmic management.
Yeah, it's diverse. AI is making this way more accessible now. But the core principles still apply. Clear briefs, maybe ask for progressive summaries, feedback loops are vital, trust, but verify.
Always good advice. Okay, finally, number 10, information fasting and digital detox. This sounds like hitting the pause button. Hard.
It is. Intentionally taking breaks from the fire hose of data. Letting your mind rest, consolidate knowledge, recover from cognitive fatigue, consciously abstaining for a set period.
Creating space. Breaking those automatic checking habits. The benefits listed include rest, perspective, breaking addiction, less anxiety, better thinking.
Yeah, like a mental reset. It helps you step back and see what information is actually essential versus just noise. It allows for deeper processing and can spark creativity that gets drowned out by constant input.
Bill Gates' Think Weeks again. Basecamp's communication-free days. Digital Sabbaths. Detox retreats. It's a recognized need.
Absolutely. Acknowledging that constant connection has costs. Intentional disconnection is becoming seen as necessary, not just a luxury, for deep work and well-being. Authors like Nicholas Carr have written powerfully about this.
How do you actually do it without feeling totally cut off or overwhelmed when you come back? Tips.
Start small. An evening, a weekend day. Have clear emergency protocols so you don't panic. Plan offline activities. What will you do with that time? Physical barriers help put the phone away. And maybe journal about it. What did you notice? What did you miss? Or not miss?
Build up tolerance for disconnection, maybe.
Kind of, yeah. And learn what level of fasting works for you.
Okay, wow. 10 really solid strategies there from the PDF.ai source. Now, I really want to connect this to that Journal of Information Literacy article, the mindfulness-based framework. It feels like a whole different layer.
It really is. It shifts the focus inward. It's designed specifically for today's messy info landscape, polarized, emotional, driven by algorithms. It came out of scholars from different fields talking together.
And it builds on older information literacy ideas, but adds this focus on our own emotional reactions or biases, and the idea that information itself often have a political angle.
That's a huge piece of it. The authors argue that even though we have more info access than ever, we're arguably more vulnerable to mis and disinformation conspiracies, especially via social media.
Which is a main news source for so many people now.
Exactly. And those platforms are incredibly effective at spreading inflammatory or inaccurate stuff fast. Think COVID misinformation, for example.
And they argue tech solutions or fact-checking alone aren't enough. They mentioned Cambridge Analytica. We can't just trust big tech to fix it.
Right. Their point is, we as information consumers need better tools, a more sophisticated approach, because even traditional critical thinking skills can be, well, misused.
How so?
They point out how some groups pushing misinformation actually use the language of critical thinking, do your own research, but they do it within their own echo chambers, digging deeper into falsehoods while believing they're being savvy.
Wow, yeah, that's a tricky problem. So this framework puts mindfulness right at the core. Why?
Because encountering information, especially online, isn't just a rational process. It triggers emotions, anger, fear, validation. And misinformation often deliberately hijacks those
To
emotions.
bypass critical thinking.
Precisely. So the framework says the first step is mindful awareness, noticing those emotional triggers as they happen. Before you even start analyzing the facts, notice how it's making you feel.
And mindfulness here means intentional awareness, openness, being present.
Yeah. Paying attention on purpose in the present moment without immediate judgment. Applied to info consumption, it means pausing before reacting.
Taking a breath before hitting share on that rage-inducing post.
Exactly. Or noticing the smug satisfaction when something confirms your bias. That pause allows for reflection, better retention, less knee-jerk reaction.
The article mentions the effect of affect, how emotions drive engagement, especially online. And anger can actually shut down critical thinking.
Research shows that yes, strong emotions, particularly negative ones like anger, can impair our ability to reason clearly. So the framework says, be mindfully aware of that. Ask, what is this trying to make me feel? Why? What does it want me to do or believe based on that feeling? Recognizing the emotional manipulation tactic is powerful.
And the understanding information part goes beyond just fact-checking, too. It's about our own biases, subjectivity, context.
Right. It pushes us to consider our own motivations, to see the difference between opinion and news, to understand that information isn't always just true-false, but exists in time, has political or commercial drivers. It still values fact-checking, but adds layers. Like, how is this curated? Is it designed to entertain or inflame using negative emotions?
And this idea that information is inherently political,
Right.
that's a strong statement compared to some traditional views.
It is. It challenges the idea that information can be purely neutral. It argues that power, ideology, money always play a role in what information gets produced and amplified. The goal isn't to make you cynical or fall for conspiracies, but to encourage critical questions about those underlying forces. Good sources try to inform without overt persuasion, but understanding the context is key.
Okay, so connecting this back, how does this mindfulness framework boost those 10 practical strategies we talked about earlier?
They seem to fit together really well. Like, mindful filtering isn't just rules, it's noticing your emotional reactions to sources. Are you avoiding things that challenge you?
Okay.
Mindful time blocking means being truly present during that block, not mentally elsewhere. Digital minimalism is applied mindfulness intentionality in your tech use.
Right.
Chunking and batching, doing it with focused attention. The 80-20 rule needs mindful evaluation of real value, not just surface appeal. Using dashboards mindfully means paying attention to what matters, not getting lost in flashy visuals.
KMS needs mindful contribution, making sure it's accurate and well organized.
Exactly. Delegated processing needs mindful communication to avoid errors. And info fasting, that's inherently a practice in mindful stepping away.
So mindfulness provides the foundation, maybe, for applying all these tools more effectively, especially with today's challenging info landscape.
I think that's a great way to put it. Critical thinking is vital, but mindfulness helps us see past the emotional smokescreens, the biases our own, and others that can trip up purely rational analysis. It brings awareness to the thinking process.
This has been really insightful. Information overload is such a beast. But hearing these strategies, especially combined with that mindfulness angle, feels, well, hopeful, empowering even.
Yeah, it's a complex problem, but definitely not an insurmountable one. It's about shifting from being passive recipients to active, intentional managers of our information environment, both external and internal.
So for everyone listening, the big takeaway seems to be experiment, Try these strategies, see what sticks. Maybe it's stricter filtering, maybe it's time blocking, maybe it's starting a small mindfulness practice. Find your own mix.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. And it's an ongoing process, right? The landscape keeps changing, so we need to keep adapting our approach.
Combining those practical techniques with that mindful awareness seems like the path forward. Moving from feeling overwhelmed to feeling, well, more in control.
Absolutely, because real understanding, real insight doesn't just come from having access to more data. It comes from how we choose to engage with it, how mindfully we process it, and how intentionally we integrate it into our thinking and our lives.
Great final thought. Thanks so much for breaking all this down.
My pleasure. Always interesting to talk about.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Hope you found some useful tools and perspectives. Until next time.